Today's daf is daf Chav Gimel, and we learned a little bit of Chav Gimel yesterday, and we got up to V'chol HaNesuas LeKohanim. So that's 4 lines down from the top. And this is a continuation of the Mishnah that began on daf Chav Beis Amid Beis. Kol HaNesuas LeKohanim Minchasehem Nisrafos. Now, when a woman is married, then she and her husband share. Her husband has a chelik in her mincha. Now, with regard to a minchas kohen, the Torah says in Vayikra Vav, "Kol minchas kohen kol iltia lo seachel." In other words, whereas a regular mincha, we split it in half. There's the kmitza, and that goes on the mizbeach, and then there's the shirayim, which is necholim lezichrei kuhuna. But in the case of minchas kohen, the Torah says kol iltia, which means that the entire mincha is brought on the mizbeach, on the eish of the mizbeach, without any mitzvah whatsoever. So therefore, in this particular case of a minchas sotah, where both her husband, who in this case is a kohen, and her have a chelik in the mincha, then even if she was not guilty as accused of this crime, the mincha is got to be brought. But as far as the kometz is concerned, we have to do a kmitza, but we can't do a kmitza because the kohen, her husband, has a chelik in the carbon, and therefore it has to be kulo kolil. So that what we're going to do is we're going to have to do the kmitza for the tzad, meaning the half of the partnership of the isha. And as far as shirayim is concerned, we cannot burn them on the mizbeach because it's also a minchas kohen, and a minchas kohen. It's also her chelik. And although from the Minchas Kohen's perspective, we should be burning it on the Mizbeach, but from her perspective, she needs Achilas HaShirayim. So we don't know what to do with this Shirayim of the Mincha, and therefore we're going to burn it in the Beis HaDeshen. And that the Gemara is going to analyze this in just a few minutes. Now, the Mishnah brings distinctions between a Kohen and a Kohenes. Ma bein Kohen leKohenes. Minchas Kohenes necheles. In other words, the Shirayim are eaten. Minchas Kohen ein necheles because we said it's kulo kolil. Kohenes mischaleles. If, let's say, a Bas Kohen had a be'ila to an Adam HaPosela, let's say a Goyer and Eved, then mischaleles, she becomes a chalola. She can no longer marry a kohen. She can no longer eat truma. Basically, her kedushas kahuna has been undermined, and she'll never be able to go back to her status as a kshera. However, a kohen, let's say he violates an iser kahuna. Let's say he has a bia with a grusha, chalutza, zona, or chalola, or kohen gadol with an almana or a pu'ula. In such a case, ain't a mischalel. The Kohen himself does not become a chalol. Now, as long as he's married to someone that he's not allowed to marry to, he's possibly avoda. But after he divorces her, he goes back to his original hechsher, and he can continue doing the avoda, eating truma, and so forth. Kohenes mitama lemesim. The iser of tumas mesim lekohen only applies to a Kohen, a male, not to a female. The ein Kohen mitami l'mesim. Kohen ochel kodshe kodshim. Now we have 4 categories of zvachim. 3 out of 4 of them are called kodshe kodshim. That's chatos, osham, and mincha. The ein Kohen is ochelos b'kodshe kodshim. The Torah commands that these kodshe kodshim should be eaten l'zichrei kahuna and not to the females. But with regard to, let's say, shlomim, which is kodshim kalim, then she's allowed to eat it just like a Yisrael is allowed to eat. It's not nechal l'zichrei kahuna. Now, once the Mishnah mentions the difference between Kohen and Kohenes, the Mishnah goes on to bring other dinim in Noshim, in Ishus, where we differentiate between he and she. Ma bein ish leisha, other in Yana besides Kuhuna, ha'ish porea uforem, v'ena isha poras uforemes. We're talking about now a mitzora muchlat, and the Kohen declared that this particular person is a vadei tameh, and the Torah says that there's a mitzvah of priya rosho, which means he has to grow his hair wild without cutting his hair, and there's a mitzvah called primas begadov, and he has to rip his garments. However, an isha mitzoras was excluded from these dinim, as the Gemara is going to derive from a pasuk, and therefore she doesn't have neither poras or poremes. But ish mother is beno ben nazir. A father could impose nazirus on his son. This is halacha Moshe Sinai. However, only on his son and not on his daughter. So that's again a difference between an ish and an isha. So if a father says b'ni nazir, then the dinim of nazirus are chal on his son. But if a father says biti nazira, then ena isha, then the bas is not a nazira. And also, as far as the ability of a parent to impose naziris on a male child, that only applies to a father, but ena isha maderes b'na b'nazir. The halacha Moshe Sinai establishes that a father could be madir his son b'nazirus, as long as the son is a katan, of course, and a mother cannot do so. Another distinction, ish megalech al nazirus aviv. If, let's say, the father in his lifetime was makabel on himself nazirus, and at the end of his nazirus he has to bring karbanos, 3 categories of karbanos, and he was mafresh mos for these karbanos, but he did them stumim. So he didn't say which mos goes to which of the 3 karbanos, which goes for the chatos, which goes to the ola, which goes for the shlomim. Now, after his death, the son who inherits his father accepted upon himself nazirus on the condition that he will bring his karbanos at the termination of his nazirus from the mos stumin that his father designated for his karbanos, meaning the father's karbanos, and that he's allowed to do, and he could take those mos and use them for his own karbanos of nazirus. And another scenario is with he and his father both nazirim, they're both alive. The father was mafresh mos stumin, and then he died. The ben, after his father's death, can say and declare, "Reidi megaleach al mos avi." And this is all halacha Moshe Sinai. Ve'ena isha, however, with regard to the daughter, megalachas of zirus avia, she cannot use the mos stumin of her father, her late father, even in a case where, let's say, there are no banim and she inherits her father, so that mos are hers, but nevertheless she cannot use those mos for her karbanos nazirus. Another distinction, ish mekadesh is pito, a man who has a daughter who's either katana or a nara up till 12 and a half, he can accept kedushin and marry her off against her will. She doesn't even know anything about it. But Eino Isha Mekadesh says Bita, but a mother cannot receive Kiddushin on behalf of her daughter. Ish Mocher is Bito. A father could sell his daughter, who's a Katana, as an Amma. Katana goes out, the Simoni Naras, so we're only talking about a Katana here. The Eino Isha Mocher says Bito, but a mother was not granted those legal rights to sell her daughter as an Amma. Ish niskal arum. If a man is chayav skila, then they strip him when he comes 4 amos close to the Beis HaSkila. However, they use a piece of mitpachas, some sort of cloth, to cover up his erva, and then he's shoved off the top there as a skila. But ish niskal saruma. But we don't expose a woman who has to be stoned to death, but rather she's covered with a garment, with some sort of a haluk. And this is because of kavod isha, maybe because of tznius. Ish nitla, there's halach that after skila, the body of the niskal is hung up on a tree. Ve'ena ish nitles, and we'll see again how we derive this. Ish nimkar v'gnei, a man who stole and he cannot afford to pay back with mos or even with karka or even with metaltalin his gneva that he sold by bezdin as an eved, and with the money that is received for his sale, he returns the gneva. But eino ishanim keres b'gneva, so the Gemara is going to derive this from psukim. Now, to introduce the next piece of Gemara, we want to speak about something called a minchas kohen. With regard to a minchas Yisrael, there's kmitza, and then after the kmitza is burnt on the mizbeach, then the shirayim are eaten by zichrei kuna. And there are two parts of this mincha of Yisrael, a regular classic mincha. The kmitza and the shirayim are written in two different psukim and two different chapters in Sefer Vayikra. In Vayikra Beis, it says v'kamatz, malo kumtzo, etc., v'hiktir, and it's brought on the mizbeach. Shirayim, which is eaten by zichrei kahuna, that which is the balance of the mincha after kmitza, that's in Vayikra Perek Vav. Vanoseres mimena yochlu Aaron ubanav. However, that's only minchas Yisrael. With regard to minchas Kohen, there's no kmitza, but rather it's kulo kolil. It's all completely brought on the mizbeach, and that's also in Vayikra Perek Vav. V'chol minchas Kohen kolil tia lo seyocha. Tanarabana. So we have now a marriage between a woman. She could be a kohenes, a levi, Israeli, so bad is not. She's married to a kohen. Minchos seyem. When she has to bring a korban mincha, let it be a korban mincha sotah, let it be other minachos, then nisrafos. What does that mean, nisrafos? Keitzad. Kohenes, levi, Israeli, sheniseis lekohen. Ein minchas enechelos mipnei sheyesh lo chelik. Well, her husband, who's a kohen, has his partnership in the mincha, even though fundamentally it's her mincha, and then it becomes a minchas kohen. And the halacha, as we saw, the mitzvah of minchas kohen is kulo kolil. It's completely burnt on the mizbeach. And the ena ola kolil. But on the other hand, we have a problem. You can't burn the entire mincha on the mizbeach, but she also, and she doesn't have the din of a kohen in this context. She has a chelik ba, and this mincha is being brought for her kapara. And the halacha is that mincha Yisrael is eina kreva. You can't bring it without kmitza, but we can't do kmitza here because of the chelik Yisrael. So what do? According to this brisa, ela kometz karv liatzma v'shirayim kreivim biatzma. So we burn the kometz on the mizbeach, and that's because of the of both the chelik ha'isha and the chelik ha'bal. So that b'manavshach, that part of the mincha, at least, has to be brought on the mizbeach. Well, what about the shirayim? If it's the chelik hakohen, the baal, then it requires hakdara gamim mizbeach. If on the other hand it's the chelik ha'isha, then it's nechal l'zichrei kahuna. So what do we do with something that on the one hand has to be burnt on the mizbeach, but on the other hand it cannot be burnt on the mizbeach? It's not allowed to be burnt on the mizbeach, and we're going to talk about a separate lav because it's shirayim anechalim l'zichrei kahuna. So the brisa establishes that kreivim biatzma, that the shirayim is burnt on the mizbeach after the hakrovas hakometz, and that's l'chora impossible. We have no way of understanding this brisa al pi pshat, because the Torah does not allow you to be makriv on the mizbeach that which has to be eaten by zichrei kahuna. Why not? Because ikri kan, this is a violation of what we call kol shu b'menu le'ishim. You'll see on the side that this principle of kol shu b'menu le'ishim is quoted in many, many different sugyas in Shas. And it's derived from a pasuk. We'll see the pasuk soon. And mimenu le'ishim means that we took part of it, of that karban, or the mincha, and it was burnt on the mizbeach, but the rest of the karban should be eaten and should not be brought on the mizbeach. And that's included on the Isur Lav of Bal Taktiru. And I'm hoping he's going to quote the pasuk. Oh, Baruch Hashem, he quotes the pasuk. Vayikra Beis, Ki kol siar v'chol dvash lo saktiru mimenu, Yishel Hashem. There's an extra word here in this pasuk, mimenu. It could have said, Ki kol siar v'chol dvash lo saktiru Hashem. So what's mimenu? Mimenu means that part of it was brought on the mizbeach la'ishim and is burnt, and mimenu, part of it, was not meant to be burnt on the mizbeach, but rather was meant to be eaten. So if you have the basar of karbanos, again, we're not talking about a karban ola here. Let's set the record straight. An ola is kula kolil, but we're talking about all other types of karbanos, including menachos, where after you burn on the mizbeach, whatever you have to burn on the mizbeach, the rest has to be eaten. And if you take that and you put it on the mizbeach and you burn it, then it comes under the lav of kol siar v'chol dvash lo saktiru, meaning siar and dvash do not belong on the mizbeach. The Torah is telling me that there's something else that doesn't belong on the mizbeach. And what is that? That's what's left from mimenu, meaning that which after you burnt and you did aktar, what you had to be maktir, the rest, the balance, cannot be brought on the mizbeach. And now let's apply this lav to the case of a minchas sotah vis-a-vis that part of the mincha that belongs to her, right? That's her mincha, or for that matter, any other mincha that she has to bring, and she's married to a kohen, but her part of the mincha requires kmitza and shirayim anecholim, so that if we're going to be maktir the balance after kmitza of the shirayim on the ishim, on the mizbeach, then we're going to be violating this lav of bal taktiru, because that shirayim has this full-fledged din of shirayim has to be eaten by zichrei kuda, and therefore to burn it would be a violation of bal taktiru. And now the Gemara is going to quote a unique sheet of Rabbi Eliezer that would solve our problem. And that's called L'shum Eitzim. Rabbi Eliezer is of the opinion that this lav of Bal Taktiru applies when you're being maktir it for the sake of a karma, which is called Reach Nichav. But if you're maktir it as combustion, what do I mean? As sort of like, fuel to generate the fire on the mizbeach, you're not being maktir l'shem reach nichach, then there's no violation of bal taktiru. Bal taktiru means don't be maktir as a carbon leishim that which has to be eaten. But if you're maktir it as eitzim is an abstract concept that indicates fuel for the mizbeach, then your intention l'shem eitzim removes the isur bal taktiru, because you're not burning it on the mizbeach l'shem haktara, but rather l'shem eitzim. Omer Yehuda Bereder Rabbi Shimon Pasi de Masechet l'shem eitzim ki Rabbi Eliezer. That other half of the mincha, which means the shirayim of the mincha after kmitza, So the kmitza, again, as we said, miman of shach, you burn on the mizbeach. But with regard to the shirayim, what are you going to do with them? You can't eat them because of the chelik hakohen. It's got to be kulo kol. You can't burn them because of the chelik isha, which requires achilus kohen and therefore generates isur lav bal taktiru. The answer is we're going to take that shirayim, we're going to burn it l'shem what? Not l'shem haktorah, but rather l'shem eitzim. And the paradigmic case of Rabbi Eliezer is a brisa that deals with a mixture of every chatos with every ola. There was a tarovis of every chatos and every ola. Now, every chatos cannot be brought on the mizbeach. Why? Because once the murim of the chatos were burnt on the mizbeach, then the rest of the basar, which we call a varim, become shirayim. And they have to be eaten by Zichrei Kahuna. And Memela, since they have to be eaten, there's an Isur Bal Taktiru. On the other hand, the every Ola have to be burnt on the Mizbech. Now, I don't know what I'm burning on the Mizbech. Is it, after this mixture, I don't know if it's every Ola or if it's every Chatas. So the Chachamim say, Tu'ubar Tzuraso, means let it stay overnight, and it becomes possible midin nosar, and then you burn it. But Rabbi Lezer Omer, he has a recommendation. He has a solution, a resolution to this problem. Because he darshans, now, in the Pasuk, let's just get the Psukim straight over here. It says, Kol sior v'chol dvash lo saktiri menu ishel Hashem. And we derive from that Pasuk and the extra word mimenu that whatever left over after the burning part, lo saktir is a separate lav. Immediately afterwards, in the next pasuk, it says, "Carbon rashis takrivu osam lashem, v'elam izbech lo yalu l'reach nichoach," and the Torah emphasizes lo yalu l'reach nichoach. Rabbi Eliezer understands that this pasuk is related to the previous pasuk, and in previously it says carbon rashis takrivo som lashem. Ola, it's going back on siar udvash at the beginning of the pasuk, the previous pasuk, and lo yalo mizbeach yesh lecha lahavi mehem bikur min advash rashis bikur admas cho shtei alechem misiar carbon rashis vavel mizbeach lo yalu. That's a remez to the pasuk that comes previously with regard to siar udvash lo saktiru, that lo yalu l'reach nichoch. But if it's l'shem eitzim and not l'shem reach nichoch, then it's mutter, and therefore you can take the avarim and you can burn on the mizbeach, and you say mimanashach. If it's a vare ola, then it has to be burnt on the mizbeach. If on the other it's a vare chatos and there's an isur, then I'm not being malid l'shem haktorah, but rather l'shem eitzim. It's just fuel. And then he can be maktir the shirayim l'shem eitzim, and he doesn't violate the isur bal taktiru. Frekti gemara anichal Rabbi Lezer to islay haisvara. The Rabbanan, on the other hand, said, if you recall, that Yetze, what does he say? Yaniach osamachi to ubar tzuroso. So we don't have that option of burning it on the mizbech l'shem eitzim, because the Rabbanan hold that even if he's being maktir the shirayim shalol l'shem haktar, but rather l'shem eitzim, it's still prohibited. They don't have this drasha with the smichus ha-psukim, and they don't have that eitzah, but rather there's still an isur bal taktiru, even if he's being mal l'shem eitzim. Is Michael Meimer, what are we going to do with the shirayim minchas eishes kohen? And the Gemara answers, Avdilei, we have another way out. Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. Now, Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon obviously is the son of Reb Shimon, and in this case, he accepted part of his father Reb Shimon's radical view, radical meaning against the Chachamim, but not hook, line, and sinker. The Sanya we learned in a brisa. Now we're talking about what's called a minchas chote. What's a minchas chote? Somebody was tovea his friend for edus. His friend denied that he had edus. He took a shvua, and it turned out to be a shvua sheker. And he denied that he had edus b'shvua, and now he confesses his crime, or a tamei who ate kachim, or entered into migdash b'shgaga, or a person who violated a shvuas bitui. In all these cases, he's chayav a karman chote, and that lends itself to what's called olav, so that he could possibly bring a minchas chote if ein yodo masegis. In other words, he doesn't have enough money in his bank account to afford a lamb, so instead he brings a karban mincha. And the mincha, well, I skipped a step because if he does have enough money to afford 2 birds, Shnei B'nai Yonah, then he'll bring Shnei B'nai Yonah. But if he doesn't even have that much money, he's bedali dalus, he's very poor, and he can't even afford a bird, then he brings what's called a minchas chatas, a minchas chote, right? That's an asiris ha'efas solis, minchas chote. And all this is in Vayikra Perek Hey. Now, what about a Kohen? If a Kohen was in violation of one of those various enumerated prohibitions, and he has to bring a minchas chote, what's the deal? Because the minchas Kohen, we said before, has to be kulo kolil. And here we have the radical sheet of Rabbi Shimon. This is all recorded in the Gemara Sugya Menachos Tafayin Gimel. The Chachamim are of the opinion that minchas chote has the same exact status with regard to a Kohen as a regular mincha, and minchas Kohen is kulei kolel. And they darshan this from the pasuk v'hoisal Kohen kim mincha. Fine. However, Reb Shimon has a radical shita, and he holds that minchas chote is different than other menachos. Other menachos of a Kohen kulei kolel, as we derive from the pasuk, v'chol minchas Kohen kol tiyah lo seyacha. But in the case of minchas chote of a Kohen, then there's a din of kmitza. It's not kulei kolel. You need kmitza, and the kometz is burnt on the mizbeach. But what do we do with the shirayim? And the shirayim cannot be eaten like a minchas Yisrael. So according to Reb Shimon, and here's where Reb Shimon is going to disagree with his father, but the kometz is kar b'fnei atzmo, and that's Reb Shimon's radical chiddush, and his son, Rabbi Eliezer will agree with that. But a shirayim craving b'fnei atzma. We actually are makriv the shirayim on the mizbeach. So when the Torah says v'yisol kohen kemincha, which the Rabbanan understood meaning that it's kulei kolil, Rabbi Shimon understood that the Torah has in mind that it should be like a minchas Yisrael, which means it does require kmitza. But then it says in the pasuk l'kohen kimincha. So what does that mean, l'kohen kimincha? Reb Shimon says l'kohen kimincha refers to the avodas hakohen, and there's a hekesh that equates minchas chote with all other minchas of a Yisrael, and therefore we require kmitza. However, as far as achilas hamizbeach is concerned, we don't have a smichus between minchas Yisrael and minchas chote of a Kohen, so that only the kmitza is burnt on the mizbeach, and the shirayim are craven liatzma. But the problem will be, what about the Isur of kol shemenu leishim bal taktiru? And the answer is Reb Shimon never accepted that principle. So therefore he holds that the Kohen can be maked to the shirayim after the kmitza was burnt on the mizbeach. But Rabbi Elazar, his son, agrees with his father that there is a din, a mitzvah requirement of kmitza and minchas chote, but he doesn't agree that he can be maktir the shirayim of the mincha because he accepted the principle of the lav of kol shrimenu leishu. So what do? Is mispazrim al beis hadeshen. So the kometz is karev liatzmo because Rabbi Eliezer holds like his father Reb Shimon, and there's a mitzvah of kmitza in the case of minchas chote. The shirayim cannot be eaten, and they're not roy lakrov because of the Yisur Bal Taktiru, because Rabbi Eliezer accepted the Yisur Bal Taktiru. Is therefore going to throw it into the Beis HaDeshen, which is on the right, the Mizrach side of the Mizbeach, and there's no takana for the shiori mincha of this particular minchas chote, not ba'krov and not ba'chila. So therefore we burn it in the Beis HaDeshen. And the mincha abba b'yeshes kohen, likewise, what we're going to do is after we makriv the komets, because of the partnership of the Eshes Kohen, then the Shirayim, which from the perspective of the Eshes Kohen's part of the ownership, possession of the Mincha, should be brought up, should be eaten, and therefore is not allowed to be brought to the Mizbeach. But from the Kohen's perspective, it requires Haktorah. So what we're going to do is Mashlichin Osol Beis HaDeshen.